The October 2025 KNAB and KIA joint resistance. When ethnic unity rose against airstrikes and betrayal. We welcome you back, everyone, from Lamyang Media. Let's begin the analysis about recent battle between Joint Forces KNAB with Kachin Independence Army KIA and Junta with its allies. October 2025 will be remembered across northern Myanmar as a month of both courage and cruelty. In the forests where the borders of Sagaing, Chin and Kachin meet, two seasoned ethnic forces, the Kuki National Army Burma KNAB and the Kachin Independence Army KIA, stood shoulder to shoulder against a junta determined to crush every voice of freedom. What began as scattered resistance transformed into a coordinated stand that tested the junta's might. Yet even as these fighters fought with discipline and faith, a darker alliance emerged. Meiteline militias, unable to withstand ground resistance, began calling for air and drone strikes from the Myanmar military. When they could not win face-to-face, they turned to the skis, summoning jets, attack helicopters, and guided drones to bomb villages and forest shelters. Still, the mountains refused to surrender. Amid smoke and thunder, a new symbol of unity took root, one that the junta's bombs could not destroy. A season of cooperation. The joint resistance between KNAB and KIA did not happen overnight. For months, junta reinforcements had pushed deeper into northern Sagaing, launching brutal operations that forced local populations into hiding. Both groups watched these movements closely. By early October, the KNAB and KIA had established an understanding to coordinate their defenses and share intelligence across the Chin-Kachin frontier. The cooperation was not based on ideology, but on survival and principle, that no ethnic nation should stand alone when tyranny crosses its doorstep. The KNAB brought with it an unmatched knowledge of the terrain, from the dense forests of Tamu and Tonzang to the mist-covered valleys of Tidim and the upper Chindwin Basin. The KIA contributed its seasoned artillery units and battlefield coordination, honed over decades of conflict. Together, they represented two distinct yet complementary strengths, one born from youthful resolve, the other from veteran endurance. The opening battles. The first coordinated clashes erupted around October 3 near Indore Township, a crucial junction between Sagaing and Kachin. According to local resistance observers, a junta convoy was ambushed by KNAB guerrillas, providing tactical ground support to a KIA platoon. The result was devastating, several military trucks destroyed, and the supply route to the north temporarily severed. But the junta's retaliation was swift. Within hours, Meite-linked militia channels began transmitting coordinates to the military's northern command, requesting air support. The following morning, the sky above Indore roared with the sound of fighter jets. Two airstrikes hit the forested hills suspected of sheltering resistance fighters. Trees burned, animals fled, and villages trembled. Yet the KNAB and KIA, anticipating the strike, had already evacuated to alternate hideouts. As one KNAB field officer later told the Irrawaddy, "We learned that when they lose on the ground, they call the planes. They don't fight, they burn from above." The rise of drone warfare. Throughout mid-October, junta forces escalated their use of drones and attack helicopters, often guided by coordinates shared by Meite militias stationed near the border. These militias, acting as proxy ground informants, provided live updates on resistance movements whenever clashes intensified. Reports from Myanmar and Myanmar now indicated that commercial-grade drones modified with explosive payloads were used repeatedly in areas under KNAB influence, including the remote hills between Tamu and Kampat. Local villagers described the whirring of drones overhead as an ominous sound of betrayal, because the strikes often followed radio chatter between Meite fighters and junta operators. Despite this technological onslaught, KNAB and KIA fighters adapted quickly. They camouflaged their camps with forest canopy, moved primarily at night, and relied on small mobile squads rather than fixed bases. Their communication shifted to offline systems and encrypted messengers carried on foot. By late October, junta drones had become less effective, as both resistance forces mastered counter-tactics, shooting them down or jamming their signals using improvised devices. Ground allies turned air informants. The alliance between the Meite militias and the junta deepened during the October operations. Unable to hold territory against coordinated KNAB offensives, these groups resorted to becoming ground informants for the military. In the past, the junta often relied on direct troop deployment to confront the resistance. But as the KNAB and KIA struck supply convoys and outposts with precision, air dependence increased. Métis groups became the junta's eyes on the ground, guiding airstrikes toward resistance zones, sometimes even near civilian settlements. Villagers from Tonzang recounted horrifying scenes of air raids triggered by false reports. One elderly woman said, "They told the soldiers that rebels were hiding in our village, but only children and farmers were here. The bombs came anyway." The deliberate use of air power to target ethnic villages marked a dangerous escalation. It revealed the junta's desperation and its reliance on local proxies to maintain control over territories it could no longer occupy directly. The KNAB's resilience. In the face of these attacks, the KNAB displayed extraordinary resilience. Commanders refused to abandon their defensive posts even as bombs fell nearby. Their priority remained the protection of Kuki and allied ethnic civilians caught between military airstrikes and proxy ground assaults. In an internal briefing shared with local media, KNAB leadership reaffirmed its commitment. "We do not fight for conquest. We fight to defend our homes, our children, and the dignity of our land. Even when they burn our forests, we will rebuild among the ashes." Their words reflected a spiritual defiance that no drone or jet could silence. Fighters often prayed together before missions, invoking courage and protection for their people. Despite limited resources, they continued to hold the line, helping evacuate villagers to safer zones and escorting humanitarian aid through dangerous routes. KIA's support and strategic depth. The KIA's role during October extended beyond joint ambushes. It provided KNAB with logistical and intelligence support, helping coordinate defensive maneuvers when airstrikes intensified. Having experienced similar assaults for decades in Kachin State, the KIA shared vital knowledge of how to survive under constant aerial surveillance. Their cooperation demonstrated a mature understanding between two forces separated by culture, but united by conviction. The KIA recognized the KNAB as an equal partner, not a subordinate group, but a brother-in-arms defending the frontier against the same enemy. Together they built temporary forward shelters, shared ammunition, and exchanged field medics. Reports suggested that KNAB's field hospital units treated several wounded KIA fighters during October's operations, a reflection of solidarity that transcended ethnic lines. Civilian hardship and humanitarian grit. While the battlefield burned, civilians paid the highest price. Drone strikes, artillery shells, and helicopter gunfire turned once quiet villages into zones of fear. Hundreds fled toward the Chin Hills or crossed into temporary shelters near the India-Myanmar border. Local church networks and volunteer groups played a key role in aiding the displaced. Despite air threats, KNAB escorts ensured safe passage for food convoys and medicine. Their humanitarian branch became a lifeline for communities stranded by war. Villagers reported that whenever air raids were imminent, KNAB units would alert them by firing 2 warning shots in the air, a signal to take shelter. In areas where junta allies refused to assist civilians, it was the resistance who carried children and elders to safety. The junta's fear of ethnic unity. The junta's heavy air response revealed its greatest fear: the unification of ethnic forces. The cooperation between KNAB and KIA proved that decades of divide-and-rule tactics were beginning to fail. The regime's propaganda attempted to label KNAB as an outsider group, but ground realities contradicted that narrative. The Kuki population in northern Myanmar, particularly in Tamu, Tidim and Tonzang, has lived in these hills for centuries. Their defense of ancestral land is not an invasion, but a rightful act of self-preservation. Every bomb dropped by the junta and its Métis proxies only strengthened that unity. The ethnic frontiers, long fragmented by geography, began to form invisible bonds through shared suffering and purpose. The turning point. By October 21, the junta's northern command faced growing losses in manpower and morale. Several of its forward bases near Indore and Homalin were either evacuated or left undersupplied. The combined resistance pressure forced the army to retreat from some outposts. Even as Métis militias continued providing air coordinates, their effectiveness declined. Drones often struck empty forests, while KNAB guerrillas struck back with precision ambushes. It became clear that air power could not substitute for courage on the ground. The joint KNAB-KIA coordination disrupted key supply routes, delaying reinforcements and exposing the junta's logistical weaknesses. For the first time in months, resistance forces controlled sections of the upper Chindwin route, a symbolic and strategic victory. Voices from the field. A KNAB commander interviewed anonymously said, "They think their jets will make us surrender, but we have seen worse. The jungle is our shield and the people are our strength." KIA field reports echoed similar sentiments. "Our brothers from Kuki land fight with discipline and heart," one officer said. "They know the value of every life and that makes them powerful." Such mutual respect is rare in Myanmar's turbulent resistance landscape. Yet October 2025 proved that genuine unity can emerge from shared struggle rather than political negotiation. Lessons from the sky. The use of airstrikes and drones by Junta Meite coordination reflects a dangerous precedent, one where local rivalries become excuses for state-sponsored terror. Whenever Meite-aligned militias failed to capture ground positions or repel KNAB units, they reportedly marked coordinates for the junta's air force to strike. This pattern has repeated since early 2024, but reached its peak during the October operations. Analysts observed that more than half of the airstrikes conducted that month occurred immediately after ground losses by pro-junta forces. The message was clear: when the ground fails, they send the fire from the sky. Yet the KNAB's moral restraint stood in contrast. The group maintained its defensive code, refusing to retaliate against civilians or use terror as a tactic. Its leadership emphasized that the fight was not against any community, but against oppression and those who align with it. The frontier of faith and brotherhood. As the smoke settled over northern hills, a deeper truth emerged. The resistance was no longer only about arms. It had become a moral frontier between those who fight for survival and those who destroy to dominate. The KNAB's partnership with the KIA reflected this awakening. Two peoples with different languages and histories found common faith in justice. Both believed that dignity cannot be granted by rulers, it must be defended by those who love their land. Their cooperation also reignited a sense of hope among civilians across Chin, Kachin and Sagaing. It reminded them that unity is still possible, even when betrayal and bombs fall from above. Toward the future. By the end of October 2025, the joint operations between KNAB and KIA had reshaped the northern resistance map. The junta's reliance on air power exposed its weakness, an inability to control the ground without collaborators. Meanwhile, the KNAB's disciplined defense and humanitarian outreach earned it recognition as one of Myanmar's most responsible ethnic forces. Its message was simple yet powerful: peace cannot exist without justice, and justice cannot exist without unity. As winter approaches, observers expect further collaboration between these forces. Despite constant threats from the air, their courage continues to inspire a generation that refuses to live under fear. Conclusion. The story of October 2025 is not just about battles, it is about the moral lines drawn in blood and smoke. The KNAB and KIA, though different in origin, fought together not for territory, but for the right of every ethnic people to exist in dignity. When Meite-aligned militias failed to win on the ground, they called upon the junta's jets and drones to rain destruction from the sky. But history will remember who stood firm under those skis, men and women who fought with faith, unity, and an unyielding belief that freedom cannot be bombed out of existence. Their defiance stands as a message to Myanmar and the world. The oppressed may be outgunned, but they are never outwilled. Sources. Based on verified field updates from the Irrawaddy, Mizama News, Myanmar Now, and local resistance correspondents familiar with the October 2025 joint operations. Disclaimer: Lamyang Media. This documentary report is based on publicly available news, verified social media updates and eyewitness accounts. Lamyang Media does not own or distribute any visual or military footage related to these events. All multimedia content used in coverage is credited to respective rightful owners and presented under YouTube's fair use guidelines for educational and documentary reporting as permitted under Section 107 of the US Copyright Act. Thank you for watching. Please do share this video and don't forget to subscribe our channel Lamyang Media for latest updates and depth analysis.